Good afternoon. Welcome to session 3 of the conference and symposium. This is going to look at livable cities, which is, I think, very interesting and important because it talks to me about the way in this case in which transportation relates directly to users. We have 5 presentations. I'm going to go immediately to our first presenter. He is Yiying He at Budapest University of Technology and Economics.
Hello. Can I start
Hi, how
directly?
are you?
Yes. So I directly start. Hello. Okay. Hello everyone. I'm He Yiying. Today, on the behalf of my co-author, Capatriza, I'm presenting the topic of customization analysis for mobility as a service. MaaS is an integrated service of services. The mobile application is the main information platform for traveler information management, facilitates the data collection of travel behavior. The output customized service is achieved from the menu input selection from the list of the options. To distinguish, the personalized service is obtained from the automatic personal achieved data analysis. The presentation will quickly go on is the content show. There are mainly 4 steps in the evaluation. First, determination of the criteria and the scoring scale. Then comes the weighting. We want to point out the weighting based on the evaluation data itself. And then comes the calculation of the scores of the functions. Finally, aggregated the function grades to get the application grade. Here, we use the coefficient of variance is the weight, and which is the ratio of standard deviation divided expectations. These 2 tables are quickly to show the evaluation criteria and the scoring scale. Generally, depending on regarding the planning, booking, such functions, we provide the criterion, and according to check the corresponding applications, if the provided information or functionality could be fulfilled, then 1 point are given for each one. These 20 applications are selected and evaluated. The detailed evaluation table and the background foundation countries website links are all available in the paper. If you are interested, you may turn to the paper. As we point out, the Italian application obtained the highest rank. It's provided the additional functions, such like recommended events and the places. In addition, the booking availability of the parking service is also provided. This figure is to show the final results of the evaluation, where we can see the 7th one, Italian one, gets the higher point. Because we mentioned that the weights are from the evaluation data itself, this table is to show the normalized weights, and this figure is to show regarding these 7 functions, how the grades are distributed among these 20 applications. We want to point out the route and additional service get the higher points. For the weight of the additional service, because some application has specific function. If that function are not available in other applications, then the expectation will be smaller. Inverse, the standard deviation will larger. This is why this function can get a larger weight. This figure is quickly to show the mode and the route setting. We can see for the most applications, the route and the mode setting options are detailed and available in most applications. When we evaluated the applications, we also summarized the additional features for this application, which can support our further research work as well. We want to start the personalization analysis. So for the conclusion, I want to point out 1 point. During the evaluation, we found the seating options are very limited for mobility impaired persons. However, the MaaS is announced is a mobility for all service. So we recommended more seating options for these people should be involved to achieve a more livable and sustainable city and transportation system. I think that's all for today. Thanks for your kind attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. Much appreciated. We'll now proceed to our second speaker, who is Ibrahim Al-Aregi with Volvo Cars Technology USA. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Ibrahim Al-Aregi. I'm a data scientist at Volvo Cars USA, the R&D Technology Center here in Sunnyvale, and I'll be presenting our work in generating synthetic ride requests using WGAN with location embeddings. Okay, just give me 1 second. Are you able to see my screen? Okay. So in this work, we model the ride request. As you all know, that ride request data has been crucial in research of improving ride hailing efficiency and minimizing the cost. So our work here aims to model the human mobility patterns to generate realistic ride hailing requests. This addresses the problem of lack of historical training data and realistic synthetic data for different hypothetical scenarios. This synthetic generation also inherently carries anonymity. So in particular, this work focuses on modeling both the spatial and the temporal distribution jointly for ride-hailing services. The generating requests that we have here are extensively evaluated under a wide range of criteria that we will show in the next slide. Our approach for this problem is using a ride request Washington generative adversarial network, or what we call RRGAN, to generate plausible pickup and drop-off locations. As you can see from this framework, we have the architecture comprises of the following components. Number one is the encoder decoder, which is shown in figure 2, and also the WGAN, which is the architecture for the Washington GAN. When we compare the generated data versus the ground truth distribution, we find out that our method actually is better than the other methods, the traditional methods such as Monte Carlo Markov chain, and also some of the state-of-the-art techniques such as RR GANs or RR graphs. For the spatial and the temporal metrics and results, we devise certain spatial similarity metrics such as RV coefficient and distribution comparison here, as you can see. And also for the temporal similarity metrics, we devised the RMSE and the MSAP. We evaluate if the synthetic source and destination locations are statistically consistent with the ground truth distribution. Also, in this figure, it shows the densification power law properties of the ride request graph extracted from both the synthetic and the real ride request. And the data that is used here was from San Francisco and Chicago. So it's approximately about 1 million ride for a period of 2 months, collected from a fleet of 500 cars. In conclusion, we basically modeled both the spatial and temporal distribution jointly for ride-hailing requests, and also generate plausible pickup and drop-off location, which can enhance the research in this area, given that there's a lack of data in this area of research. This is very important work for Volvo Cars because we manage a fleet of car, a station-based work called a station-based company called M. It's our future mobility future mobility solution for the ride-hailing requests. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I appreciate it, particularly given the hour of the day it must be in California. So much
Yes.
appreciated.
Thank you.
Let's now proceed to our next panelist, Cinziana Raska at the University of Agder. We are ready for your presentation. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm a PhD research fellow at the University of Agder, and today I'm going to talk to you about my research on the applicability of existing public transport sustainability indicators to Norwegian small cities and towns. Climate change is directly influenced by greenhouse gas emissions, as we all know, and transport has a significant contribution to this globally. It's actually 16.2% to be exact. But what metrics are there to measure the sustainability of the transport sector development? Transport is an ever-present category in general urban sustainability assessment frameworks, such as the ISO 37120, which is actually the first international standard that can help us measure the sustainability of cities. Dedicated frameworks, such as the ones developed by Arcadis or by WBCSD Mobility, exist as well, next to the ones that are targeted at general urban areas. These are targeted specifically at transport. In our study, we used transport indicators from these three frameworks, and there is a core common element for all these frameworks, in that they include the three key areas of sustainable development, which are economy, environment, and society. We pre-selected 27 indicators that focus on transport sustainability from the three frameworks I presented in the previous slide, with the scope of testing their applicability on to small cities and towns in Norway, and we chose the region of Agder to do that. This testing was done in two steps. The first step was a workshop with urban planners, where they had to rate the indicators and evaluate them from a more general urban sustainability planning perspective. They had 27 indicators that we selected, and 2 of the 27 indicators were not considered important by any of the groups in this workshop that we had as the first step of our study. So they were eliminated in the second step. So the second step was another workshop where we invited transport planners from the region of Agder to evaluate these 25 transport sustainability indicators. The participants had to evaluate the sustainability of the existing public transport system in Agder using those 25 indicators. To do that, they were actually given alternative profiles of people living in the three main cities in Agder, which are Kristiansand, Grimstad, and Arendal, and they were divided in three groups. The participants had to adopt the profiles when they were evaluating the public transport offer and use the 25 indicators. This gave them a more diverse perspective over the public transport network challenges for the user groups and not just their own personal perspective. They, of course, had to evaluate the indicators, keeping in mind the three areas that we mentioned: economy, environment, and society. When comparing the results from both workshops, which are presented in this graph and also in the paper that you can read for more details, the indicators that were seen as crucial by all participants from the first and second workshop were emissions and transport mode use other than the car. So these were the top two indicators which were considered absolutely crucial by both by both urban planners and transport planners in the two workshops. And they were followed by distance from home to the public transport stops, number of public transport trips per capita, public transport affordability, and occupancy rate of public transport. At the opposite end, indicators such as energy efficiency, kilometers of bike lanes, or mobility space usage were only considered important by the urban planners participants in the first workshop and not at all important by the transport planners. So this gives us the impression there's a different perspective there. There were also some comments on the indicators. For example, for the affordability of public transport for poorest group, there was the note that it has to consider the poverty level in Norway. Intermodal connectivity and intermodal integration were said to have similar name and they were confusing. And kilometers of public transport system, it was considered to be only relevant in city centers. And for congestion and delays, the participants said it should be divided into car and public transport. The conclusions of our study are that there are clear differences between urban and transport planners' evaluation due to the dimension of the perspective. The urban planners have a bigger perspective of the whole city and transport planners only about the transport network. Methodology applied in workshop 2, which was the shift of perspective. Specific transport terminology, which was hard to understand by urban planners, which they were not experts in the sector. And that there's a real need of adapting existing sustainable transport indicators to the realities and requirements of small cities and towns, considering their specific geographical and economic conditions. The methodology shows promising results in fine-tuning existing indicator frameworks and tailoring them to the needs of different urban communities. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you very, very much for the presentation. We'll now go to our next speaker on the panel, Christian Schulich with the University of Jena.
Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. And do you see my presentation? So it should be okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to present my article about smartphone-based taxi application and its place in smart cities. First, I would like to say that our article was prepared with cooperation with Mrs. Professor Kalashova and Mrs. Professor Poljak, and we are from University of Žilina, Faculty of Operation and Economics of Transport and Communication, Department of Road and Urban Transport. So here we go. Cities play a significant role in the social and economic aspect. They have an impact on the environment in all countries around the world. There are many cities with persistent social, economic, or environmental problems. On the other side, there are many well-organized cities. They offer more effective solutions for a better quality of life for people, and forecast says that the population will continue to grow in coming years, and it means that the number of residents of cities will also increase. Maintaining acceptable, environmentally friendly transport is not about building a new transport infrastructure, but implementing new technologies such as application to integrate rail mobility into the city, car sharing application, car association, ride sharing, bike sharing, taxi application, and more from these applications. As you can read in our paper, Mrs. Professor described there are many information about sharing economy and its social aspect. We also perform a sociological survey about young people, because the Slovakia is slower in the use of new transport options. Therefore, we decided to ask for the opinions of young people. We have decided to make a questionnaire addressed to young drivers. We wanted to determine the details about the behavior of young people. The questionnaire contained of 20 questions, and in the end, we also asked questions about modern form of sharing economy, and the results are presented in our article. Totally 378 students aged from 18 to 26 years fulfilled the questionnaire, and the mean age of the respondent was about 22 years, and the coefficient of variation is about 9%, and it tells us that there was a relatively low variability of age, which is suitable for us because we wanted to have similar respondents in age. As you can see in this graph, this is the first part of our article. We wanted to know the skills of young people with modern technologies and with other types of transport. We also asked respondents if they ever used products of the sharing economy. This product was bike sharing, taxi application services, scooters or car sharing, and these figures shows the results. Up to 81 of respondents confirm that they are using new transport methods, and the remaining part have not yet used this opportunity. I'm sorry if I go through this first part of our article too fast, but in my opinion, it's better to highlight what problems and changes are related to smartphone-based application in field of taxi services. I process this part of article because I have own skills with the Bolt or formerly Taxify application. As you know, these digital applications are used for calling a taxi with a driver who can transfer you from uh, one place to another. This driver can transfer one or two or four person to choose a location, and the price is known before the starting this ride. The legislation in Slovakia has not been successfully prepared for such types of mobile applications. Therefore, they had been operating for a short time on the edge of the law. Since April 2019, legislation connected with taxi services was changed. The big advantage of the digital platform is the fact that passenger knows the price in advance. In the digital platform Bolt, there may be situation where the price is changing during the transport. This is the case when the passenger change the destination during the transport. Uh, the most important legislation in field of taxi is Act 56 about the road transport, which also regulates the rules of business in road transport and taxi services and the operation of dispatching. Road Transport Act says only the concessionaire may operate a taxi service. It authorizes it to offer transport services and conclude the passenger transport contracts. The concession also entitles the carrier to operate a dispatch center, and in this table you can see how legislation requirements was changed in 2019. So as you can see, there was a few requirements which was erased from the law. Thanks to the different definitions in law, every driver who wants to drive for any of the digital platform, for example, Uber, Bolt, Hopin, etc., from 1st April of 2019 must hold a taxi driver's license. The amendment to the Road Transport Act has brought some simplification. This table on this slide shows the condition for issuing the driver's license before and after the amendment of the act. You can see that I was one of the drivers of Volt in 2019, and it was my freedom activity, and I must say that the profitability in this field is very complicated. The sustainability of shared economy depends on the profitability of service providers. Business in road transport can be sustainable only if there is possible to reach the critical point of profitability. We have expressed its value as a number of rides per month. If the operator reaches this number of rides, his business will not be in profit or loss. First, it is necessary to calculate the cost associated with operation of taxi services. So this table shows the calculated or estimated costs of taxi operator who has only one vehicle, and in this case study there was a carrier or concession holder, also a taxi driver, without establishing a limited liability company or doing business under someone else concession. In this table, the cost have abbreviation. There are fixed cost and variable cost, which depends on traveled distance. It is not easy to calculate the revenues that flow from the taxi business with Bolt app, because the Bolt app doesn't have the exact prices for each kilometer. But supply and demand in this market is changing every day. Sometimes there are many vehicles online and only a few customers. This ratio can change several times in one day. Our calculation is based on real rides, estimated of the rides utilization coefficient is also calculated in the article, and the average distance of one passenger transport is 4.80 kilometers, and the average revenue for the one ride is 3.54 euro per ride. However, we must highlight that the Bolt commission is at the level of 24%. Therefore, we can consider the revenue of 2.69 euro per one ride. It is possible to perform a simple but accurate graphical analysis. It helps us to find the critical point of profitability. As you can see from this very simple picture, you can see that the driver must complete to 113 rides per month if he wants to obtain some business profit. Most of the time, however, the driver is online but out of the work, and for these waiting hours he will not receive any financial compensation. The sustainability of this service is very problematic, and both applications give some bonuses. Their purpose is to regulate demand and supply and improve the economic attractiveness. And in our paper, we focused on the sharing economy as a necessary tool for sustainable smart mobility. We emphasized that without a human component, the platform is irrelevant. And in the second part of the article, we have described the major changes in field of taxi service, which occurred in April 2019. And for existing carriers, the changes mean some simplification of business, as they are no longer required to demonstrate financial reliability or professional competence. And taxi drivers do not need to undergo a proficiency test when applying for taxi driver's license, and the conditions were more difficult especially for drivers of the Bolt platform who worked in Slovakia on the age of law until the 1st April. And this driver did not meet the requirements for taxis, and from this date all rules apply equally to all platforms and all taxi services in Slovak cities. At the end, I would like to say that I continue with the research in field of taxi services. For example, last week I processed more than 6,000 records of taxi application, taxis companies, and I know now I can make some preliminary statement, and I must say that the legislation changes and new taxi application cost an increase of more than 2,000% in number of new taxi concessions. Exactly during the first 4 months of 2019, we had 52 new concessions in Slovak Republic, and during the next 4 months, we had 1,111 new concession. So it's unbelievable how marketing campaigns working and how many people, as me, for example, wanted to make own taxi services, own business in taxi services. So this is the end of my presentation. I think it's done. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. This concludes session 3 of the symposium, and we will now move into a combination coffee break and poster session. Thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance so far. Stick with us through the rest of the afternoon, please.